What is going on, traders? Welcome back. Kai Williams here with Clover Trading, and in today's video we're going to talk about some of the hottest runners that we've been seeing over this summer trading period, specifically into July and early August here of 2023. The reason being is summer trading is usually on the slower end of things, but it seems as though some of these runners that we've been seeing are kind of igniting the market a little bit. They're a little bit hotter. They're bringing back some volume and some momentum into the kind of small cap land. Irrelevant of the indices and the overall markets, these tickers and stocks are still kind of doing their own thing. They're moving their own way. They've got their own agenda, right? So they're hot, they're fun to watch. A lot of traders are trading, they got a lot of volume. And so let's talk about them. Let's dive right in. The first one is TUP, ticker TUP. This is actually Tupperware Brands. For those who don't know Tupperware Brands, when I first found out they were Tupperware Brands, I was kind of shocked because Tupperware is one of those companies that kind of set the brand for all things Tupperware. Like, again, your leftover food storage container, right? There's numerous companies now that have, just leftover containers for food, but I always call them Tupperware. I've always called them Tupperware. It's like when I call Advil when I'm taking ibuprofen, right? They're one of the, or Kleenex, right? It's not a Kleenex or tissue. They're one of the ones to really brand themselves. Now, unfortunately, if you look at their chart, they have not kept up so well, right? They have been slowly failing as a company. I think the saturation of, again, just the Tupperware industry in general, many more companies are making many more leftover food containers. So they haven't stayed competitive and they've been slowly failing. And I guess this is what technically got them interested, or got a lot of traders interested in this, specifically short sellers, was that they have not filed a earnings report in, I believe, the last 2 to 3 quarters. So they have been watched by a lot of short sellers as possibly getting delisted for just not keeping up with the standards that it takes to remain on a listed exchange. And the reason being why this is important, because BBIG just had this happen to them, where they, for whatever, I forget exactly what reason why they got delisted. It might have been because they weren't reporting earnings, don't quote me on that, but out of nowhere, the NASDAQ just came out and said, yep, we're gonna delist you to the OTC, you're not following our requirements. And literally overnight, and this was in after hours on the 27th of July, overnight it closed its, call it this 470s and opened down at $2 and then sold off to $1. And now we are sitting just a few days later at 50 cents. So if there's any reason for a listed exchange, whether it be NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, to come out and tell you, hey, you're not meeting our requirements, we're gonna delist you, you can see what happens. It's very, very ugly. And so I think a lot of short sellers are interested in TUP for that reason, because they have not filed their earnings in 2 to 3 quarters now. It's like, what's going on? That's not a positive sign. That's not something that as a shareholder should be excited about. It's a little bit concerning. And I think it just kind of caught wind. And the problem is when a lot of short sellers in one of the same stock, they end up getting forced to cover if the position goes against them. Hence, I think a lot of this was just a solid squeeze along with momentum traders just wanting to buy it. It offered a lot, actually really 2 solid breakouts. And after this first run up and then pullback, the very next day it had a great breakout over that first high of 182, ended up going higher and setting a new high of 375, did the same thing, one small pullback day, and then broke out again, all the way as high as $6, 591 to be exact. And this run started from about, 66, 67 cents. So again, if you want to round it out, about 1,000%, 900 to 1,000%, which is really, really freaking impressive. Unfortunately, I was not one to buy these breakouts. In hindsight, I wish I was. I actually was shorting this. I shorted this on this red day. I believe I shorted this on this little mini parabolic spike. I also made some good money on this pullback day. I did lose some money on this top day of the 1st of August. I'm just thinking it was going to die and it didn't. Made about $7,000 or so on this day. And so in total over this entire run, I have made just under 17 grand. So I'm pretty stoked with it. You may be wondering why they actually ended up gapping up, because this is a pretty big gap. It closed at 350 and then just, what was this, on Friday or Thursday into Friday of August, ended up gapping up all the way to 550. That's because finally they put out a PR you want to call it, saying they are restructuring their debt. What that means long term, I'm not one to say or judge. All I know is that, again, a lot of shorts who were still in this entire run thinking, hey, they're going to get delisted, or hey, they need to put out earnings, otherwise there's just some sketchiness and uncertainty around this. They kind of flipped the switch on everybody and said, hey, we're not going to release our earnings, but we're going to tell you we're restructuring our debt. I think that kind of turned some heads. It was a huge squeeze. If we actually go into the intraday, it actually took some shorts on for a ride, hitting actually as high as 7. So forget $6 in real trading hours, right, back here, but talk about $7 or $7.20 to be exact if you were in after hours and pre-market per se. I guess this is after hours. Pre-market actually gapped down to the 5s. But you see what I mean here. This is why swing shorting can be very, very dangerous, because you never know when a PR might come if you're not prepared. Believe me, I know, I've been there. And so for now, where this stocks goes, until they release their earnings, is going to clear up a lot of air. But as of right now, it's still a hot runner. There's still a lot of volume every day. Maybe this keeps squeezing shorts who keep staying in it. And then again, if it ever ends up resetting itself and breaking out over the $6 area, I'm not usually a huge fan of buying something extended as this, but it's clearly worked the last 2 times. Eventually it won't work, which is why, again, trading any breakout is always risky. Like trading anything is risky in general, right? We'll see where this goes. So very hot runner. As you can see, just again, very speculative, but that's what makes makes some of these tickers run very huge. Next one we have is YELL, Yell. So Yellow Corp. This was I believe a trucking company that was almost like 100 years old. So doing business for a very, very long time. But again, similar idea here. Their chart has just been, unfortunately, if you look at the long term, nothing really spectacular. In fact, quite ugly. The longer term you go, it gets quite uglier, like I said. And so they have kind of just come out and said, we're gonna throw in the towel. We're gonna give up. We're gonna eventually file for bankruptcy. We're kind of shutting down. And you would think when a company does that, their stock price is not gonna look too good, as it wasn't. You know, when that news came out, it gapped down from $1 all the way down to like 50 cents at the low. Now, the part here, and this is why it's important to know why anything is running, if you could find news about it. Again, some tickers run with no news at all, but this one actually had news, which was there is a fund named MFN Partners Group, I believe. They actually bought up 42.5% of the float. As I'm looking at the filings here, their last filing to report here is the SC13DA. They bought up to 22 million shares of the float, hence being 42.5%. And this is them right here. Now, I actually didn't know this at the time. I just thought it was inefficiency when I saw this thing spiking from 80 cents all the way up to $1.80. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is a company that's gonna go bankrupt. They just pretty much rolling over and waving the white flag, giving up saying so, yet the stock is spiking. Like, this is a huge inefficiency. That's what I look for if I'm looking to short something, and I did. I shorted it on this day on the 1st of August, but unfortunately I had not known about the fund buying up their shares, so I took a 5K loss shorting this, ultimately only finding out after the fact that this company was buying, again, millions of shares. So that drastically changed the shift of things, and again, had I known that, I probably would not have shorted it here, right? I probably would have waited a bit and been more meticulous about it and been smarter in shorting it maybe on this red day. Unfortunately, I didn't either. I kind of got scared again knowing the fund was buying. I didn't know if they're going to buy more, and so I did get cold feet overall in general, so I can't say I really would have traded any better, but I am unfortunately down $5,000 on this ticker. On vice versa, had I known that, and this is why, again, knowing the news is important, I should have switched my bias. I should have probably gone long. And so same thing here. Long term, yes, the companies who go bankrupt, their stock price does not do too well, but I think the reason why this fund is buying it is because they're such an 100-year-old company, because they've done business for so long, they actually have quite a bit of assets that may be valuable in bankruptcy. Again, I don't actually know how that's going to play out throughout the bankruptcy, legal kind of process, but again, I'm assuming this fund's much smarter than I am. They know something I don't. Doesn't mean I'm going to buy them too. No, they have got their own strategy, which isn't mine, but the point is they're doing something with it. And so again, same thing idea, kind of the same thesis as TUP. A lot of short sellers might be shorting this thinking eventually when they go bankrupt, this stock price is going to crater. The fund is saying something else. So again, if this stock continues to keep holding up and wants to re-break out, we could continue to see a very, very hot run. You never know. Just because the company is going bankrupt, just because the company is sketchy, like not reporting their earnings like TUP, doesn't mean momentum is here and things can run higher. So again, something to watch and keep watching on YELL here. Another one is NKLA. NKLA has been a runner all the way since actually June. For those who are into the 4-leaf clover, or those who are a 4-leaf clover, you got a really good video lesson that I talked about and how I traded it here. On top of the fact, in the chat room, a lot of people nailed this breakout, including myself. I actually had a small swing in the 140s area, just thinking to myself that I thought this was holding way too well. It was holding a buck, a lot of volume, stayed pretty consistent, and I thought to myself, this isn't how a crappy stock that I thought this would be should holding up, and if it's holding up this well, there may be a move higher, right? I was kind of early on this one versus not even thinking about buying like TUP or Yell. This one I was a little bit more prepared for. Actually, they ended up putting out a PR about, I believe, getting into hydrogen, which is kind of an up and coming hot topic among cars. Like, yeah, there's electric vehicles. There's also possibly talk about hydrogen vehicles. NKLA is one of them, trying to go from electric to hydrogen as they were back in 2020 and 2021. For those who know the backstory, it's a whole other thing, but it gets very messy. As you can see here, just to show you for a second, all the way as high as $90 on the idea of them being electric. Turns out the car was total scam and didn't really actually run, but here they are still fighting to make something happen for themselves, and they ended up breaking out on huge volume. I ended up making about 14 grand on this day. I did not take it overnight, unfortunately, in hindsight, but it gapped up huge from 220s all the way up to 270s. Again, still has held around and actually broke out again. I then ended up losing money. I remember buying it on this day and selling it on this day, thinking we were gonna hold this breakout of 295 to go higher. I actually ended up being about a day or two early, as it did end up going all the way to the 370 area. But unfortunately, in pre-market the next day, they did announce their earnings. And again, I don't know their earnings, I didn't look, but I could assume that given this company is still in the early stages of creating anything they plan on doing long-term, their earnings probably weren't that great, right? I know this company has also had a history of diluting their shares, having dilution. And so whatever was said, or however the market reacted to their earnings, it wasn't too pretty, right? We gapped down all the way to $3 and we actually sold off late day all the way down to 150 in the intraday here. Late day was a pretty ugly fade right into the close. So again, where this goes from here, I'm not sure. I honestly personally could see it fading back down, but again, always something to watch, because if this does keep holding up like it did previous two times, we could continue to see a high or a move higher. You just never know. People always ask me, how long do you keep a ticker on your watch list? Probably longer than I should. I like keeping something at least a week, 2, maybe even longer. Former runners like to be current runners, right? People have like muscle memory. They like to replay runners that they already played in the past. Hence why some of these tickers I think are important to keep on watching, because you never know which one will continue going higher or continue bringing momentum, either for longs or for shorts, both ways, right? The last one here that I want to mention is TTOO, just because I didn't really look into what news was going on here. All I know is that this is a beautiful, beautiful breakout chart, with the breakout being 18.35. It broke out and immediately went all the way up to 27.7, almost a full 10 cents. Ended up having even a bigger gap to the 30s and then running to the 40s. Call it, over 100% move in a matter of 2 days, almost 200% move, really. Actually, yeah, because it went from 16 to 32, which would have been 100%, and then approaching 200%, but didn't get there, probably in like the mid 100s. But again, very, very impressive. Jack Kellogg really nailed this breakout in the chat room. I believe he bought it like 16.6, slightly before the breakout level. I believe he ended up selling in like the 21, 22 range. So even he sold early. I played it as well. I didn't really like how he played. I felt a little bit late to the party, even though I did buy below the breakout level. But again, it just went much higher than I expected. Very, very impressive. I actually was looking to eventually short it, but I ended up not doing it. It just sold off too much for me. Even though this ended up being a great red day for your short sellers out there, selling off from 33, 34-ish all the way down to 25-ish. 24-ish. I would have liked it much more to run and say to like the 40s or 50s and then short it in the 40s and cover in the 30s. Once it gets into this 30, 20 cent range, I become less and less of a fan of short selling it. I'm just not a fan of short selling really, really low price tickers. Doesn't mean I haven't in the past, but I just didn't because of that reason on this time around. But again, same thesis, right? This kind of run back in June and July started this first breakout level. It pulled back for a few weeks and then broke out again. You just never know. This may hold up, keep holding up, and break out again. I'm not saying it will, not saying it won't, but it's important to keep your watch on, keep an eye on it, because you just never know when another 100, 200, 300% breakout may be in our future, any one of these plays. So yeah, that's it, guys. Some tickers to watch in the coming future. Maybe they continue over in the summer trading. Maybe we'll even get new tickers. I almost guarantee we'll get new tickers because there's always opportunities around the corner. Other than that, guys, thanks so much for watching. Tune in to our next video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you then. Peace, guys.